You can only control what you can control. You can't control the uncontrollables.
November is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about men's mental health awareness, toxic masculinity and why it's not a good thing, and why we need to keep talking about this subject. I'm Emma, and I have a podcast, When Life Gives You Lemons, where I talk to amazing individuals who have been through adversity but come back and achieved incredible things. My guest this week was a guy called Ross Austin. He's an ex-military commando who was out on tour in Afghanistan and knelt on an IED and was blown up tens of feet into the air, had his leg blown off and half of his good leg also blown off. Despite the physical challenges that he endured, he was able to have an illustrious career in the Team GB powerlifting squad for 6 years, and now he competes as an adaptive CrossFit athlete. As well as talking about his physical challenges he endured, he also talks about his mental health challenges. And he talks about when he was discharged from Headley Court, which is the rehab military hospital, he went home alone. So he was lacking that social support that he'd had for 3 years whilst he was in Headley Court. And he had no job because he'd been medically discharged from the military. And his mental health took a spiral. And really sadly, he attempted to take his life on 2 occasions. Luckily, he failed, and he knew he needed to reach out for help, but he didn't know what to do. So he reached out to local charities, and the charities said to him, "We'll get back to you when we have more time." And he said, rightly so, "Well, what if I make that decision in the period that I'm waiting for you to get back to me?" And they said, "We're really sorry, we've got a waiting list." And I think that's the world we live in at the moment. You know, the NHS struggles with its resources, charities struggle with their resources. So I think what we need to do is we need to know how to help people that are going through challenging times with their mental health if they can't access the support that they need. I had another guest on the podcast, Ricky Nuttall, who is now a mental health advocate because he was a firefighter at the Grenfell Tower, and his mental health also spiraled out of control when he was diagnosed with PTSD.
I just completely fell apart. I began drinking heavily. I began using drugs, taking cocaine a lot, just to try and numb all of the pain that was in me. Unfortunately, because I had never suffered with poor mental health before, my partner had never suffered with poor mental health. Neither one of us knew what it looked like, how to process it, how to deal with it. We had none of the tools.
I've also spoken to Tom Daley, the diver, who speaks so eloquently about the mental health challenges he has endured whilst competing professionally as a diver. But how did these guys overcome their mental health challenges? I'm sure they do still have some demons, but it got me thinking about toxic masculinity and why that is not good. Why do men always feel like they have to be the strong ones? When I was going through my cancer and Johnny, my amazing husband, was so supportive, did anyone ever really ask him how he was? When we had some miscarriages early on in our marriage, did anyone ever ask him how he was feeling? Not really, because as a man, they are expected to be the strong ones and to support the women around them. But it's okay to show vulnerability. And Taylor James, another guest on When Life Gives You Lemons, started his own podcast by showing his own vulnerability when he also was facing mental health issues, when his mum had a routine operation which went severely wrong. And Taylor started talking into a microphone in his bedroom, and just by talking about how he was feeling has helped his mental health significantly. Suicide rates in men are soaring. The UK Mental Health Foundation found that 1 in 8 men struggle with their mental health and with anxiety.
3 in 4 emergency service responders in general suffer or have disclosed that they've suffered with poor mental health, one way or another. I think 1 in 4 has contemplated suicide.
Men's mental health is a societal issue. It's not just isolated to men. We need to challenge gender stereotypes. We need to make men feel that they can talk and open up about how they are feeling. So what can we actually do? Well, we can ask the men around us how they are feeling. Regularly check in with them. Roman Kemp, the broadcaster, who tragically, he lost his best friend to suicide, and he also talks about his own mental health challenges. I've heard him talk a lot about mental health, and he always asks someone how they are, not once, but twice. Because the first time you're going to get the stock answer of, yeah, I'm okay, whereas the second time you might actually get the truth. Know where to signpost people if they're not okay. So signpost them to charities like Mind or Samaritans. And what can we do for our own mental health? So listeners of the podcast will know that I'm a massive advocate for exercise. When we exercise, we release large amounts of endorphins, the happy chemicals. So that makes us feel good. And also the social networks that we make with exercise or with sport are and can be phenomenal. It's so important what we eat. So there's lots of interest at the moment on the gut microbiome, and they found that the gut microbiome can have an impact on our brain health. So what we're taking in nutritionally is so important. And connection. Steph Peltier, the happiness expert, says that connection is the prerequisite for happiness.
The prerequisite is human connection. One little tip that I like giving people: if you feel in the dumps, speak to a stranger every day. It's free, it's super easy. Get out of your house and engage in conversation with anybody every day.
I love what Tom Daley says when he says that you cannot feel anxious when feeling grateful. So perhaps considering some kind of regular gratitude diary.
You cannot feel anxious and grateful at the same time. So if you're feeling grateful, it's very hard to feel anxious. So sometimes taking that step back and having the perspective of knowing what you are grateful for in your life at that moment allows you to kind of like strip back that anxiety, strip back the pressure and the worries and just perform.
Now I'm going to ask you to subscribe here. You can listen to the podcast episodes that I've mentioned by clicking here. And now go and phone a friend and ask them not once, but twice how they are actually feeling.